All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr., Terence Crawford, and specifically sources that I have that say all this talk about the 50-50 split, 60-40 split is a whole lot of nothing, and that fight, if Errol Spence Jr. wants it, will get done to the satisfaction of Terence Crawford. Let's talk about the explanation for why they say that in this video. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. Before I get into the subject matter of the video though, I hope that you listen to the video all the way through, but if you do not, please make sure you hit the like button, share, subscribe, and all those good things that help grow the channel. All right, so in this video, we're going to have a continuation video off a discussion we've been having over the last couple weeks about Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. There are a lot of people out of there that are losing their hope that this fight is going to happen. One of the big issues that took place last week is that Terence Crawford still said that he was not going to fight Errol Spence Jr. for 60-40. And, you know, that was a barrier that was going to hold up the fight. Errol Spence Jr. had, not at this particular moment in time, but earlier said that he was not going to fight Terence Crawford for 50-50 because, you know, he didn't deserve it, and that Terence Crawford is going to have to take what we give him, right? So a lot of people are kind of up in arms about that one way or the other. One group of people are saying, you know, that Terence Crawford, you know, shouldn't, because he's risking his life and he's a 3-division champion and all these other arguments, that he shouldn't have to fight, he shouldn't have to take low money against Errol Spence Jr. Other people are pointing out that Errol Spence Jr. is the bigger pay-per-view draw, has the more of the numbers on his side, and that is, you know, that should sway the day. So, you know, going back and forth with that over the last couple weeks, I made a couple calls, and I have some people that are pretty close to the circumstances, but are also professional negotiators, people who are familiar with Al Haymon, familiar with Fox, familiar with the circumstance, specifically boxing fans also, and people that have worked with these guys in the past. And I got their take on the matter, and pretty much this was the take on it, is that, look, Errol Spence Jr. is a reasonable guy behind the scenes, and he is somebody that trusts Al Haymon to get his business deals done. He's not somebody that is going to, that if he says he wants to fight Terence Crawford and Al Haymon presents him with a deal that he thinks is reasonable to take place, that Errol Spence Jr. is not the type of guy that is going to stand in the way of that. And also, and this is something that I had said before, that Errol Spence Jr. has stated to people that he wants that fight. That is, when he said that he had strap season, his man down, he says, line him up. You know, he tweeted out, you know, a picture of Fox Sports saying, what's next, Crawford or Terence Crawford, that, you know, Errol Spence Jr. is full on board, willing to go for this fight and wants this fight. And so similar to a circumstances, and this is the example that they gave me, similar to the circumstance where Errol Spence Jr. wanted to fight Shawn Porter for the WBC belt. Shawn Porter had some demands and things, relative to that fight that Errol Spence Jr. did not agree with, and that if people had known what that circumstance was, they would now see that, okay, Errol Spence Jr. is somebody that can relent on certain demands and in order to get the fight done that he wants to get done. Also, when you talk about percentage splits on fights and 60-40 and this and that and the other thing, my guy was basically like, look, you got to remember, and this is something that I could also share with you because I've done a lot of negotiations myself, is that, look, man, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And the big question is going to be, what is the value that Fox Sports or Showtime would put on that fight for airing the fight? Right? Because you have certain streams of income relative to a boxing match. You have, you know, with the network can guarantee a certain amount of money, like with the Canelo Alvarez fight, where regardless of what the pay-per-view was, Canelo Alvarez was going to make $40 million no matter what the pay-per-view numbers were, and he actually asked, you know, no matter what, you know, the opponent was. Now, at a certain point in time, you know, the network said, no, we're not just going to guarantee you that if just for fighting anybody. However, you know, pretty much gave him the $40 million guaranteed sight unseen on the pay-per-view to make him happy, right? So that was something where Canelo Alvarez really didn't care necessarily about the percentage split. Even though he had the percentage split, he cared much more about the guarantee that he was going to get. So in the scenario with Terence Crawford, one of the ways that you could work that out is that you give Terence Crawford a higher guarantee and say to Terence, okay, look, I know, let's not talk about the percentage of the pay-per-view or the percentage of this or that. In real dollars, how much money do you think this fight is worth for you? What is your target, right? And in negotiations, you call that a BATNA, right? Best alternative to negotiated agreement. At what point in time are you going to walk away, right? Because you don't actually get paid based off percentages. Like you don't, let me put it that way. You can get paid based off of a percentage of revenue earned, but you do not actually deposit percentages into your bank account. You deposit money into your bank account. So they just simply explained that, look, man, this guy, Al Haymon, is an expert negotiator and knows how to get deals done. If Errol Spence Jr. wants this fight and Floyd Mayweather, and Terence Crawford wants this fight, Al Haymon, who is the business manager for Errol Spence Jr., is going to sit down and talk to the manager for Terence Crawford and say, how much money do you want to make for this fight? This is the general pool of revenue, cost, benefit, what do you call it, like profit loss, generalization of how much we think we're going to make in this money. How much is your client going to be willing to make in this fight? And how much risk is he willing to take? So pretty much you can say, I'll give you a higher guarantee in the amount of money that you're going to earn, and you take less risk on the back end. And Errol could take a lower guarantee, but take more risk on the pay-per-view sales, right? But the question really is going to be is how much money guaranteed are the networks going to put behind the fight? And my understanding is that Fox Sports and Showtime believe in the fight. And they believe that that fight is going to do good pay-per-view numbers, is going to be a really good fight that is going to be able to, really promote, that it will be easy to promote and will bring in a lot of eyes and a lot of views to their network. So there are things that are in play there because of the size of the fight and because of the interest that has been in the fight for several years that give them a little bit more leeway in being able to work the deal out. But under no circumstances should people really be taking the fact that Errol Spence Jr. may say, okay, nah, I don't want 60-40, or I'm not going to give you 50-50 and all that, and really consider that to be a real negotiation. That is somebody, and this is what the guy says, like, look, that's Errol walking down the hallway where you have a camera in his face and somebody trying to tell him his worth and basically trying to get in, a little back and forth. That's different than when you actually are in the negotiation for the fight. You sit down and say, okay, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. This is the money that's there. How are we going to divvy up this particular pie? Who's willing to risk what on who, right? All of that type of stuff. So their take was, look, provided that Errol Spence Jr. actually wants to fight, and their understanding is that Errol really does want that fight, and Terence really wants that fight, but they're not, necessarily in Terence Crawford's camp. But Terence Crawford is saying he wants to fight. When the time is that those guys actually sit down, there should be more than enough money and more than enough options on the table to get to the point where Terence Crawford wants to be and to the point where Errol wants to be as far as the negotiations go. But if they don't actually want the fight, then, you're going to have a bunch of demands that may be, exorbitant or something like that may jump in there, or the networks don't necessarily think that this is the time to make the fight. So they may not be willing to make that investment right now and might say, we got to do a couple other things to help promote this fight. And that might stand in the way of the fight as much as, any type of percentage split or the desire of the two fighters to fight. So anyway, man, I love having really good conversations with people like that. And I thought that was a really good observation that I would share with you. You let me know, though, what you think in the comment section. Hit the like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff would be greatly appreciated. And with that, I'm out. Peace.